Lucinda.
Pleasure.
Um, I'll just introduce me and Georgia. So we are some of the core participants of Reimagine, Remake, Replay. Been in for a wee while, and we were doing the programming, part of the management team. And so we were very keen to just have an experienced artist come in, and that's where you came into mind pretty instantly. um, and yeah, for anybody here that doesn't really know Lucinda, she is designer extraordinaire, um, based in Belfast, and ethics and sustainable fashion very much at the core of your practice, and making fashion fun, which I kind of think everybody kind of forgets to do a lot of the time. And as well as that, Lucinda is recognised as a good and very big mental health advocate for support of mental health in Northern Ireland, and a very admirable openness and knowledge on it all as well. So yes, thank you for coming in. Yeah, great to have you.
So happy to be here. Honestly, it's my second time with RRR, and it's always so fun and just wholesome vibes all around.
Yeah,
Big
I'm
fan.
super excited. So yeah, we'll just jump in, and I'll pass it over to Georgia. You start us off.
Yeah. Hello, Lucinda. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us today and for taking the time to be a part of the Mental Health Arts Festival.
Pleasure.
It's great to have you. So would you mind telling us, just as a first question to kick it off, where did your interest in fashion stem from?
Um, First of all, what I will say is if anybody ever describes me as an artist, it gets the same reaction from me. Do you know if like you're out and someone says, give that lady the thing or whatever, and you're like, lady? I'm a child. Like, what? Some people refer to me as like an artist. I'm like, wait, me? Really? Like massive imposter syndrome, but that's a whole other conversation. That's first point. Second point is I guess I actually, it wasn't necessarily fashion, it was just like creativity in general, because I was really torn between studying fine art and painting or fashion, because I just really liked making and doing things in my hands. I spent a lot of time in hospital as a child with a condition in my hips, and I remember one of my friends' mums came, and this is like really showing my age because all the Gen Zers are going to be like, what? You didn't have a DS as a child? But Nintendo, whomst. But it was like this big plastic drawing thing, and basically you got to design the dresses that went on the paper dolls. That literally makes me sound so old. It was the 90s, it was a whole different time. And I remember somebody giving me that and just being like so obsessed with it. And so that was, I guess, maybe a little trigger, a little light bulb moment. And then my nanny, my grandmother, we call her nanny, she was an interior designer. And so I guess sometimes just being in the studio with fabrics, even though she was more on like the business end of things, just having that exposure, I think, to fabrics and not knowing what to do with them, but being so intrigued by them, always kind of, just caught my eye and was something that probably just never left me, really.
Yeah, awesome. That's really, really interesting. So it's been an interest of yours since you were a child.
Yeah.
Look at you now, though. It just shows you like you can get there. You can reach your dreams.
Oh,
Good.
I need to remind myself of that though when like the stress and stuff kicks in
Definitely,
and
yeah. No,
things
you
are
should,
tough.
you should be proud of yourself.
Yeah. Oh,
Definitely.
thank you.
Yeah, no
And
problem.
sorry, Georgia, go ahead.
Were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, whenever you like in conjunction with being in the hospital and that whole like environment, and then like as you've kind of gotten older and you still have like the emotion kind of like attachment to it, would you ever feel like the emotion or whatever headspace you're in, would you feel that that translates like into what you're making or your art at the time? Like,
Yeah, it's such an interesting question because I think what that comes down to is the creative process, which is such a beautiful thing because every single creative has a different process. And even if they're similar, the way that people execute the process will be entirely different. And that's what makes it so kind of unique and wonderful that everybody has their own fingerprint. And I guess the weird thing about mine is that I actually work very backwards. So because I only work with dead stock, with vintage fabrics, with waste, with kind of other people's offcuts, stuff from factory floors that are damaged. I get the fabric first. And so I end up kind of looking at these discarded textiles and being like, okay, well, what can you be? What can I envisage you as being? So there's not really a process of I'm going to sit and design this thing and then I'm going to make it. It's actually working fabric first. But then I think that headspace and that influence actually comes when things get really difficult and things get really stressful, and the inevitable kind of insanity of working for yourself and trying to be I say artist in inverted commas because, you know, a creative or whatever you want to call it. But then you get to come into a studio and do and be who you were made to be. And I know it's like wishy-washy or whatever as that is, but it's such a beautiful thing. And so I think if that makes sense, it's a very backwards way, but it's when I'm making with my hands and when I'm stitching a lining or doing something by hand that I feel that that connection, and that's kind of the way I process things as I'm working. It's not very often that I have a thing in my mind and then I translate that, although I used to when I was younger. And I think that that's really important for younger artists especially, to journey through what's happening in your own mind, in your environment, and to process that as much as possible. And I definitely tried to do that in university because I was working through a lot of stuff and had a lot of frustrations, and I shaved my head and I was like, I'm a punk now, mom. I'm gonna be like angry and like figure all this shit out, like I don't know what to do. But definitely I think as I've grown older, it's more it's a lot calmer, and I think I process that while I'm making instead of the process being through the making, if that makes sense.
That's amazing. Like very like cathartic or something. Like,
Yeah, it like, in danger of sounding like very much a new age hippie, it is massively healing to work with your hands and to have something in your mind and to be like, I want to make this, and then having the ability to follow that through and make it. Sometimes I still shock myself that I'm even able to do that, because that's something that I did dream about as a child and I always wanted to do. So it is a very like, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what is stressing you or relationship tensions or anything, you still have that like sacred kind of space to create. I think it's really, really important.
amazing. I dream.
Anyone is welcome to come to the studio and do that as well. This is an open space.
Love it.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Sorry, were you going to say something, Molly?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, congrats on 10K on your Instagram.
Thank you. Oh, I was laughing so much with my boyfriend about this and was like, are you not going to buy me balloons? Are you going to buy me like, like I want the silver helium influencer balloons. And he was like, I will leave you if you get balloons. But yeah, a bit surreal. Like, I'm still not sure why anybody follows me, to be honest.
Oh no, it's great. No, definitely. I was like, I saw it was like getting closer and closer to 10K, and then I went on the other day and I was like, yay.
Literally, I have one friend in the States who is like an amazing supporter of me. She's a model and a poet, and anytime I see that my followers like have jumped a certain amount, and I mean she is like maybe 45, 46K. So anytime I see that there's a jump, I just go to her story because I'm like, I know she's probably shared something. So like shout out to Drone Me, like the one she's like my Kris Jenner, like my momager, honestly.
We all need a bit of that, bit of moral support.
Absolutely. I'm here for it.
So now that you have, well, you always have had a large following, but now that you've reached double figures, 10K, do you feel that it affects your mental health in any way? Do you feel like you can be yourself online still?
Yeah, super interesting question. I think to kind of like flip it on its head a little bit, I don't think any of us can fully be ourselves online because you choose what you present online, whether that is like really alt and kooky and weird, or whether it's glam and kind of perfected and face tuned and, you know, photoshopped and whatever. Everybody has a different aesthetic and everybody's going to have a different approach to social media. And it's definitely a really weird thing. It's a cool thing to grow online and to see that people care about you or about like or like what you do. Like that's a really surreal thing, especially coming from a really rural place, to see people around the world that like just are have an interest. Like that's a really in itself is a really beautiful, wholesome thing. But like none of us were made to have 10,000 people who have access to our every move and to every single thing we do and to what I had for breakfast and where I am for lunch. And, you know, so in that way, I've definitely toned down in like sharing. So some things I'll share that are like I literally shared a meme where I like photoshopped myself onto Danny DeVito's face because I was like, somebody made a joke that I looked like Danny DeVito, and I was like, I can't unsee that now. Like something like that, I literally don't care about, and I'll post that. But I won't tell people that I'm having like a really tough month, or I won't go into details about why I'm having a tough month, or I'll go out for drinks with my boyfriend, but I won't post about it because I'm like, I just want this space to be like just me and you, or because there's honestly there's times you'll post something and people will be like, oh, like I want to come meet you, or like I'm in town, or if I go somewhere and people are like, hey, like let's meet up, and there's kind of that lack of privacy. And like in reality, most of us probably have like three really deep, close people, like the absolute like inner circle, and then you maybe have like a scattering of, you know, like mates,
Yeah.
friends that you love and you're close to, but like not like the super close, and then you've got mates. But like that wasn't meant to be divvied by like 10,000, you know? So I definitely think I try my absolute hardest to be authentic. And if I ever find myself online feeling like pressured or feeling like I'm not posting enough art, or like this designer, this artist is posting way more than me and their content is better and they make all these amazing reels and they're like so slick. And so sometimes when that happens, I'll literally do the opposite and like post like a rant or post like a really stupid meme, because I'm like, at the end of the day, Instagram's fake. And something I always try and tell myself when I get into that kind of obsessive headspace, because Instagram's very good at like getting itself into your brain and you're like, this is fake, like this isn't real. And what I try and tell myself is, worst case scenario, my Instagram gets deleted, like, or I get hacked and it gets deleted or something like that. I'm still me. I'm still a designer. I still make, like, what I care about is all the same things. So just kind of sitting down and like catastrophizing and running it through, something my therapist told me about, running things through to their eventual end, and being like, well, yeah, like if that happens, nothing in my life has changed. All of my friends are still the same people. I'm still me. And sometimes that just helps to ground you and to kind of stop you from getting really like obsessive about it, because it is so easy to get like perpetually wrapped up in it. And even the way that the algorithm and Instagram's designed is so that we stay on the app for like hours on end. And obviously as somebody who freelances, like I can't and I shouldn't give that much time to it. So yeah, recognize it for what it is. It's good. It's a tool. I've met some of my best friends actually through the app. It's amazing, but like just pinch of salt, you know.
Absolutely. Like
Awesome.
when you say like running it through, it's like nearly like it's like making a garment, you know?
Yeah.
Like the steps is it's the whole process and then you get the
Yeah.
final.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like in terms of like being your authentic self and in fashion, and I know that a lot of your work is so much on expression and being your authentic self and trying to get that across and still making it fun. Do you feel like pressures on that in, well, I suppose not even just on social media, in the whole perspective of how you work?
Yeah, that's such a fantastic question. There definitely is that pressure because I think that because of social media, we have far more access than we like ever would. So people are subsequently trying to be louder to gain attention. And the whole aspect of slow fashion and slow living is that it is slow and that it takes time. But Instagram says, I need a story, I need this, I need that, you know, like constant. And so I think it's definitely, like I spoke about that a bit earlier, sometimes you see other people who are maybe a few steps up from you, or maybe are stocked in showrooms and maybe are based somewhere that is really conducive towards their work, and it's very, very easy to like green-eyed monster and get very like, what am I doing wrong, and kind of, you know, all of that. And so I kind of trailed off. Remind me of that question again.
Just like being authentic and expression.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the thing that I always really wanted to communicate, and the first collection that I did, the first full collection on my website, was called Sustainable Not Shy, because I wanted people to know that like you can wear clothes that are really cool and really wild and different, and like rich in terms of like the quality of the fabric, without having to be like fully minimal and very plain, and you know, beiges and khakis. No tea, no shade, we love a beige, we love a khaki, but you know what I tended to find, that the whole, even the whole marketing of sustainable fashion and doing all of that was very like plain. And I was kind of like, well, people who tend to live, not always, but tend to live like just in the fullness of themselves and really express themselves, do that in a maximalist way, like through their fashion. So like, why wouldn't the fashion with the same ethos reflect who they are? And so it's always been something I've really been trying to do, and I guess you could say I'm still even exploring what that looks like as like a sustainable designer. I don't know why I'm doing that. I am a sustainable designer. Ugh. But you know what I mean? Like it's a really hard one to figure out. But I think the most important thing is that when somebody buys something from me, that it's like a piece that they keep for like years. And it's, you know, when you own something that's so special that you don't ever want to like sell it or give it to a charity shop, you have to give it to somebody that you love and you know that they're going to appreciate it. And so these pieces that have these kind of like legacy with them, and I guess that's what I'm trying to build, that people shop in a way that is like so true to who they are, not trend based, not like, oh, Kim K wore this, so I will buy the misguided version of this, but be like, what do I actually like, and what makes me feel good? And oh, if I sell that, then that's great, but hopefully then it's something that they keep and build like a legacy around, and it's something that's important for them. So kind of, I guess, yeah, the authenticity kind of translates even into like the marketing, because I really want people to hold on to pieces and just like love them for as long as possible.
Yeah, amazing.
It's lovely to have that sort of idea behind your work as well.
Yeah.
That shows that you're very caring and stuff. It's nice. Have you felt that lockdown has had any sort of impact on your art? How have you coped with that?
Um, I mean, in some cases, terribly awful, horrendous, worst 12, 14 months of my life. In other ways, very, very thankful, and in danger of being somebody who's like, I was really blessed with the pandemic. Nobody was blessed with the pandemic, like nobody. But it pushed me to do this, because I always had a part-time job. I was waitressing, I was working in a centre, always to make sure that I was getting paid, and that then I would do this on the side to kind of subsidize the pay. And that first year out of uni was really, really hard. Like just getting by. I have the odd commission, the odd styling job, but like the work was so dry. And then out of nowhere, kind of lockdown hits, I lose my job. So kind of any safety net that I had tried to like build to support me was like gone within a week. And so I very much was like, this is really now or never. And I just committed myself to it. So like every single day, jobless, every single day I just got up and was like, well, I'm going to teach myself how to sew this, because there's also a misconception that if you go to fashion school that you'll know how to sew. And I know that sounds really bizarre, but if you've been to art school, you'll understand that you don't always come out of the course knowing what you think you were going to know going in. So I just committed myself to being like, what do I have around me? What are the materials like available to me right now? And how am I going to teach myself to like just make? And I just kind of committed myself to that. And it started by making myself stuff. And then people seemed to really, really respond. And I started taking commissions, and it just built and built. And so it very much allowed me to do that. But that was also with its own kind of mental health consequences, as someone that suffers like massively with depression and anxiety, being cut off from my like long-term boyfriend, not being able to see him, having my dad is high risk, and my sister was living with us and she just had a baby. So that like really puts kind of the stakes in another, because I know a lot of people were kind of like lockdown, but kind of, went and saw like some people. I saw absolutely no one and was incredibly secluded. I had moved home to be with the family to kind of, we were like, we'll ride it out 3 weeks max. And we, like, I didn't have a bedroom or anything because I just had moved home. I mean, I just grabbed bags and left the house. I had no clue kind of what was happening. And I ended up living on like a sofa bed in like my parents' like back room, and like also working in that space. But then of course doing that, and I think maybe my parents seeing how committed I was to that, they were like, if you want a studio, if you pay for the renovations of that, this is like a barn. They were like, if you pay for the renovations and then pay rent, this can be your space. So I was like, cool offer, David and Jude, I'll take it. So like swings and roundabouts, but like honestly, my mental health was shocking throughout the whole thing. I am a raging extrovert, absolutely raging, and to not be around people and to not even be able to have people in my studio and in my space was so hard. And even trying to do the creative process whilst being cut off from not being able to go to a fabric store, or going into charity shops, or going to visit clients or do fittings in person, or for like my styling work and some of my commissions, I fly back and forth to London. So doing everything online and over Zoom, as well as being self-employed. The thing is, like, me and my friend always joke about this, and we say, what is a weekend to a freelancer? Like it doesn't exist. It's not a thing. because if somebody emails you on a Sunday and it needs done, like it needs done. And it's so hard to have those boundaries. And so what you end up with then is this really like weird, slow burnout kind of being online and being aware of like your emails and what people expect of you and your schedule, because you can't, like, when you work at home and work for yourself, you can't be like, okay, and shut your laptop and like go, especially in a pandemic. Where are you going to go? Like, you can't even go anywhere. So I think that was like the hardest, like mentally, trying to like stay sane. And I honestly think that sewing really helped keep me sane, because it took me out of whatever headspace. And like, I think the grief, I think so many of us were experiencing grief of our lives kind of being shattered all at once, and grieving not seeing our friends. And I kind of, I think in a healthy way, not in a suppressive way, but I think in a healthy way, I just chose to, I'm just going to throw myself into making and dissipate all of the kind of negative cloud that's on me. And I think then in terms of how that affected my like creative cycle, creative person, I don't know. I think it allowed me maybe to come back to my roots of like being obsessed with like clothing and like being obsessed with what you do, because you end up, you can get really bogged down with work and money worries and, you know, all these different, all the different components of life that really take away from making. And so to just be allowed to have time to just be obsessive about what you do, and for that to be like okay, you know, was really special. And as much as it was like an incredibly detrimental time to my mental health, it also was very, very valuable, because it allowed me to like throw myself into my work all gas, no brakes, because in a way, because I couldn't, because this overnight became my only source of income. And but also in a very therapeutic way, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And you mentioned earlier that you were, if I got this right, staying in your parents' back room on the sofa bed, and then you kind of had that sort of realization. Do you think that kind of inspiring attitude, like it's now or never, sort of in a way saved you, if you like, during lockdown? Like, do you think it kind of, do you think you would be in a different place now if you hadn't have sort of thought, right, I really just need to make the most of this? And
yeah, I think honestly it was the duality of the pressure of having no money, like no savings,
yeah,
no money. Like, you finish art school and you're already in debt because it's so expensive, and then you launch straight into working a minimum wage job for like 45 hours a week, which still only gets you by, you know. So I think that the partnership of the very real like money pressure mixed in with, well, like I literally have nothing else to do. But I think almost for me, more than the creative thing at that stage, I was thinking more about my sanity than anything, because like I I'm I love my family, but we're not for context, my family are from an academic and an agricultural background, and I came in and said, hey. So like we don't really you know, I'll be like, who wants to watch the Alexander McQueen documentary? And they're like, you know what I mean? So that there's not really that kind of connection there. So even for my, I think for my own sanity, I was just like, I just have to keep sewing. But I think I also saw it as an opportunity to like further my skill and to get better, because we always are in a like state of learning, if that makes sense. So I just really wanted to make sure that I didn't waste any time, and yeah, trying to see like the good out of this, or not even the good, but maybe the possible opportunities. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's so interesting because like I was kind of thinking like how like mentally
Mm.
like and especially during the pandemic, but in general, like how can you kind of separate the work side of sewing and designing,
Yeah.
and then the enjoyable, like this is my safe space, this is my little hub where, you know, my heart is set on it, like how the balance of it. I think it's so interesting that during such a stressful time you were like, no, this is me, I'm gonna throw myself into it and love it.
And that's still, I feel like, honestly, if somebody ever figures out the like cheat code, like the Sims cheat code of how to do that, like let me know, I will pay, because it's so hard. Because sometimes, like even for example, the jobs that I do as a freelancer, you invoice and then you just wait to get paid on hope and a prayer. They will just pay you whenever they see fit to pay you. And so even within that, there's such a lack of stability, and you go into the minus, you go into the red on your card, and people are like, you know, you're doing so well, and oh my gosh, like look at all these things, but all you can see is like the fear and like the financial strain and the terrifying nature of like knowing that the last of my jobs that I have booked ends in July. What happens after July? You know, that kind of consistent fretting, and that kind of, it's not panic and it's not fear. It's just like a low grade anxiety that kind of sits on your brain. And that's why I'm really thankful for Adam, because he definitely helps. I am a worrier, but he definitely keeps it in perspective. And he's like, pause game, look at the space, look at where you've come from, and hence where you're going to go. So just let it go, stop worrying, the money will come when it comes, and just enjoy this space and enjoy getting to do this, and like the absolute privilege of getting to be somebody that gets to make. Because I spent so many years not this is the first time I've ever had a studio bar in art school where you get like assigned a space. This is like the first time I've ever had my own space. And yes, sometimes you need somebody else to be like, stop moaning, stop complaining, stop worrying, and like look at where you are just right now, and like not allow any of that fear and worry and the business side of things to cheat you out of, just like you said, cheat you out of your safe space and out of the loveliness of being able to do this.
And that like second perspective as well, to just get you back in that headspace of, okay,
Yeah,
it's all good.
yeah. And I know he's always right as well, but I'm like, sometimes just let me like wallow in it, like just just let me be. Although I know he's always right, I'm like, shut up.
Oh, that's amazing. I think there's a few questions popped up. So Georgia says, what makes you happy as someone who has experienced mental health problems?
I think I have quite a weird, not a weird, I know a lot of people experience this who struggle with their mental health, where even when you're happy, you're still sad. That kind of weird, it's like residual sadness. It's kind of always there, and it kind of seeps into a lot of the things you do, which is really, really tough, because it can steal a lot of your joy and a lot of your happiness. Um, I think what I've been trying to do is, I passed my driving test recently, which was great because everything opened up and I was finally able to do it. And so like taking, this sounds really lame, but like taking myself on dates. So like just myself, and I'll drive and I might go swimming in Murloch, just like by myself.
I love
With
that.
like a really chill playlist, and I'll bring a little speaker, and I might bring like a little coffee or something, like make a little cute picnic. I mean, when I have time to do it, and just by yourself, because I sometimes think getting out of the house without music, without anyone else, and just thinking is, I know that sounds so lame, but like just sitting and thinking. Because when you're on your phone or when you're in the studio, all you're thinking is like on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But it sometimes is really lovely to let your mind just wander and just sit and like think about really pointless things. And I think the things that something that I've learned this year is that you can't work well unless you're resting well. So unless you're taking time specifically to like rest, so I take Sundays off every week unless there's something very pressing that like immediately needs my attention. But I take Sundays off, and I will go and get like a few pints with my boyfriend and with my friends, or we'll go and get lunch. Last Sunday we went and got a chippy, or just hanging out in my boyfriend's back garden, or watching something really stupid on TV. Like, I think after the pandemic, just the really little things that aren't bougie or like super expensive, or like buying new things, like those really lovely like intimate moments, whether with yourself or with someone else, are so like, they just remind you of like what's real, like working and all. Yeah, that's great, but like nobody's going to be on their deathbed and be like, I wish I'd done more invoices, or like, you know what I mean, like nobody's going to be doing that. So I think just taking time for yourself for like little moments just makes me so happy, like going on a wee walk, or taking myself to get coffee. Charity shopping as well, instant serotonin, big fan.
Yeah,
So yeah.
self-care. I'm gonna take that note. I'm gonna bring myself to some dates.
It's so much fun, and also you get to be all like mysterious, because you're like, ooh, nobody knows who I am, and you're just kind of like walking around like on a solo date. It's great.
I love that. I think that's honestly like such good advice as well for anyone who's listening, because like I completely agree. I think having me time is so important, because I don't think enough people do it either.
Yeah.
I think people get very caught up and they actually forget to sort of think, right, like stop.
Yeah.
Like my mental health comes first, and
Yeah.
I need to put myself first here, and I'm going to do that. And taking yourself off, like you said, swimming or whatever it may be. Like I went for a picnic with my dog and sat up near the beach by myself, and I loved it. And it, like I didn't use my phone. I read a book and listened to music and brought a packed lunch. And like it, people may think it's weird, but you know, if it works for you, then
Yeah.
Like I think that's really good advice. And I think just taking time to yourself, honestly, can make the whole difference. Especially having your phone turned off and being out in nature.
Yeah, 100%. Because even me and Adam sometimes, like, we used to live really close to each other, and now obviously the pandemic, we live like quite far apart. So like, even we'll like FaceTime at night, but we'll both be like, okay, we're actually gonna hang up because we both want to wind down in like our own ways. And like after a really busy day, he might have been working a 12-hour shift, I'll have been in the studio all day, but like we'll both be like, okay, good night, because like we both want to like breathe, like wind down. And I think, yeah, doing that yourself is like so underrated.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. Stephen has put into the WeChat there, he's asked, Lucinda, so interesting to hear about your work and process. Do you have any advice to artists or freelancers on how to manage boundaries and maintain good mental health with all the stress of being constantly on the job?
Okay. Yeah, Stephen, that's a fantastic question. And again, if anyone cracks it, please let me know ASAP. Because sometimes the stress is really overwhelming, especially when, like, as a stylist, I work on jobs that involve huge teams of people. And so even like the budget getting through to you might take longer, and your constant communications, like your emails, Google Drive, text, WhatsApp, DMs, it's just like this kind of constant overarching wave. Something that I do personally is I write a list at the start of every day of everything that needs to be done on that day. And I also bought myself some really bougie highlighters. So I'm like, ooh, a pastel blue highlight. Like that. It just makes it like, you know, a little bit bougie. But I write down everything, because I think part of that stress is when it's all in your head, especially as a freelancer, because not only is it in your head, it's on your phone. Like your whole life is in this one little device, and trying to constantly get everything. Like sometimes you go on your phone to do something, and you're like, what was I going to do? And you're just like, your mind is just chaos. So I think writing it all down, and then I put little tick boxes by the end of it, so I can very clearly see, what do I need to do in this day? What is the priority? and then try and do the hardest things first, or the things that I've been like putting off. And then it means at the end of the day, let's say you didn't get one task done, you know exactly what that is, you can see it, and you can let that roll on to the next day and add that to next day's list. And that might sound really like intense, but I find seeing it on a page helps me manage my own expectations and manage my stress, because I can see exactly what I need to do. And I've said that before, I think on even the last session that we did, that I use an actual physical Filofax, like an actual planner, because everything's on our phone, like Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, YouTube, text, WhatsApp, whatever, you name it. So trying to do your organization on your phone as well is like just waiting for an accident to happen. So I find actually writing things out, in as well as like what's happening in your day to day. So if you have a meeting, if you have certain things that have to be done by a certain date, there's little note sections. You can make sure, just managing your own time and managing your own expectation. I think time management takes away so much of that stress, and then it means that you have something separate. So like your phone is, you know, chaos, but at least you can manage the chaos in like a static place, and then you can highlight it and make it all colorful and lovely. In terms of boundaries, that's really, really hard, because sometimes it just needs done, and sometimes like you will be emailing at like 1 a.m. and it just has to be done. I think trying to take healthy breaks after times of like intense stress, which is so hard, and it's something I even find hard to execute for myself. So if I come off of the back of like a really crazy 2 weeks, I'll take an extra like 2 days off, and like won't do anything, and also won't feel guilty about it, like giving yourself that downtime. But I also think hypocrite alert, but I also think trying to separate your workspace and your bedroom. And I know a lot of people, especially young people like myself, who have had to go back home and stuff like that, it's really hard to have boundaries or to have any lines of separation. But I would try as much as possible to not do any work in your bedroom, so that you have a space to close your laptop and be like, I'm going to my bedroom and I'm going to watch YouTube videos. And if that's not a workspace, that's a place of calm and a place of like breathing. And honestly, I would take 1 day off a week. Like we were made to go all the time. Like we just weren't. And if you do, your work will suffer and your attention span will suffer. You'll make more mistakes. It happens to me all the time. Like if I'm in the studio and I'm working maybe till 1 a.m, like sewing, like I was last night, I've me and my assistant have a rule, and once we've made 2 mistakes consecutively, like silly mistakes, we stop and go to bed, because there's no point. Like there's something called the law of diminishing returns, and it means, let's say somebody put 8 hours into a project, and 8 hours would equal an A, right? But if somebody else put like 14 hours in and did so much more work and produced so much more, but it was still an A. And that's not saying like slack or don't push yourself, but to a certain extent, it's okay to manage like your expectations and outcomes. So I definitely think give yourself like 1 day off a week, allow yourself to unwind, look after the little things, do your washing, make yourself a nice meal, cook a batch meal for yourself, do your shopping, hoover, those little things. Because I think we're all like self-care, put on a face mask, but like that's not actually self-care. Self-care is like looking after the things that like need to be looked after, need to keep ticking over. And you can also do those with a face mask on, I guess. So, you know, both of those together. But yeah, I would just say, yeah, definitely take a day off a week, even when especially when it feels like you don't have enough time to, is probably when you need it the most to like reset your brain. Yeah.
I remember there was like recently, there was like one job I've been putting off for ages and ages and ages. Took me like 10 minutes.
I'm like, oh, roll that over to the next day. Oh, it's been going on for like 2 weeks.
What was a question here from Clodagh? And she says, I'd love to ask you, Lucinda, do you have a creative process that you stick to and trust, or are you constant trying to hone or change or perfect that process?
Ooh, very good question, Clodagh. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm very young. I'm 25, so it'll probably change as I grow older. I mean, I feel old and wizened now anyway at the ripe age of 25, but I feel that as we grow, how we approach things changes. So how I do things now has changed from when I was in uni, and that was from 2019 till now. Um, I think my specific process that I chatted about earlier is the fabric. And looking at the resources that I have to hand, whether that is X upholstery. I work with interior designers and they give me their samples. So things that they can't sell anymore, that like usually get sent to landfill or get burnt or whatever, I take from them. So kind of looking at the potential that's there. But I also, I'm really, like I talked about earlier, I'm very obsessive and I love I'm looking at them right now, big coffee table books. I collect them about all sorts of subjects, but there's a really lovely shop on Botanic, and I think it might be like a Save the Children or something, or maybe an Oxfam bookstore, but they sell great coffee table books. And so sometimes I'll get myself a coffee or whatever, a little glass of wine, and just sit and go through it and go through it, or watch a documentary or something, and it'll be like something that just catches my eye, and I'll be like, oh, that's really interesting, and I want to know more about that, and I want to explore that. As well as, I think quite fiercely, I'm very much like, if everybody else is doing something, I don't want to do it. So like if everybody is doing one style, and let's say it's very popular and it's doing very well, I won't want to do that, because I very much want to be interpreting in my own way. And so it'll be an amalgamation of, you can actually kind of see this wall behind me, which actually goes like another 3 meters this way and another 3 meters that way. All of my kind of reference images, and I scan different books and different things that I've seen, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool, or I love the color of this, and I like having it in front of me. So I guess you could say that's part of the creative process, and picking up on little nuances of design. But again, it's very different from how other people design, because a lot of other people will draw something and then will work it out. But in a lot of ways, I'm completely self-taught. So as much as anything, I'm just making it up as I go along. Like whatever works. And sometimes you'll have this great idea and you're like, groundbreaking, like, what's that Lady Gaga quote? And she's like, brilliant, amazing, not afraid to reference or not reference, stunning, fantastic. Like sometimes I'm like, I am a genius. And then I go and do it and it looks awful or it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, bye. So like, so much of the process, as well as like the kind of glamorous fun aspects of it, is just a lot of trial and error and trying stuff that just doesn't work, but it's kind of all part of the fun of it. So I hope that answers your question, Clodagh.
And I think we have just a final two quick ones. Lisa says, who inspires you the most? And Holly says, thank you for sharing your experience with us. Do you have any advice for anyone who doesn't have a normal 9-to-5 job on how to stop worrying about financial stability?
And who was it that asked that last question?
Holly said that last one, and Lisa says, who inspires you the most?
I'll go for Holly's first, so that then we can maybe end on like a high note question. Yeah, Holly, it's something that I'm still figuring out how to do. It definitely doesn't cripple me in the same way as it used to. I always think of that TikTok with the girl with the glasses, and she's like, I've been broke before. It's like, well, I didn't die last time. So like, I mean that's making very light of it. Like there's genuinely been times like in uni and post uni where like I was eating white rice and soy sauce, or white rice and sweet chili sauce for like months straight, because I couldn't afford anything, or I'd put so much money into my collection that I'd be like, okay, I can have dinner or I can get a taxi home. You'd be like, obviously I always choose food, duh. But yeah, there are very real choices. I think a way to manage that is to be good with your money. And again, hypocrite alert, it's taken me a really long time to get good with money. And I think it's very, very hard for our generation to do that, because everything on Instagram and online is like, buy this, sale, buy that. This influencer is a QR code or like whatever. And I think stepping back from that and being like, I have goals and I have stuff that I want to reach. And, you know, saying no to stuff, it's really hard. But like the amount of times where I've been like, my mates have wanted me to come out and I'm like, I have money, but if I pay to do this, I won't be able to put fuel in my car to go to this event that I have to go to, you know. So it's planning that out, and again, kind of running things through to their actual conclusion takes the stress away, especially when it comes to money. But I know it's really, really hard because it's a real tangible need. Everybody needs money. So I think to minimize that stress, try and plan your finances as best as you can. But I mean, I say that and I'm waiting on a hefty hunk of cold hard cash coming my way that it's like a Russian roulette. Like, I don't know when they're gonna pay me. They probably don't know when they're gonna pay me. And I'm sat here like, hi, sorry, do you remember me? Do you want, oh no, okay, it's cool, you don't need to pay me, I don't need to eat, that's fine, that's cool, it's not like I have bills to pay, no problem. Single tear. But yeah, I mean, sometimes if you didn't laugh you'd cry, like you would. There's no way around it. It is really, really hard, especially when you don't have a 9 to 5 anymore, and when you have kind of stepped out of that. And I would say my one other piece of advice is try and do something that try and utilize a skill set that you have that people need. And it might not be your absolute passion in life, but it's something that other people need, and it will get you money. So for example, in uni, I tattooed people because I tattooed myself. I tattooed other people for like quick money. I sold prints. I like just designed stuff online and sold them, posted them to people, sold them to my mates. I if I ever saw something cool in a charity shop and knew that I could sell it for more, I'd buy it and sell it just to get, like, even if it's like 20 quid or something, like that's 20 quid more than I had before. Little bits like that. Or let's say like I found that I had a real knack for like social media management. Don't enjoy doing it, but I knew that I understood it and was good at it. So people would hire me, and I actually ended up getting a lot of jobs through knowing how to work social media. And so like little skills like that I'm sure you have, if you kind of sat down and looked at like, what are skill sets that I have that I can maybe utilize to help support what I actually want to do. And that's a really good way to get some sort of stability. And I think that's the how would I describe this? The crux really of like being a creative. As stressful as it is, it's also incredibly fun. And I think what it sets apart for the creative community is we are people who are incredibly resourceful, and you are like, okay, I need money. I have a direct need. What can I do to fix that? And that in itself stems so much creativity, as long as you don't allow the stress to wash over you and to completely pull you under. Because honestly, there's been times I've been bawling my eyes out on the phone to my boyfriend about money and being terrified, and people might even look at you online or whatever and think like, oh, they're fine, like, you know, they're not worried. But I'm literally in my wardrobe like, what can I sell, what can I like pawn off to, like, I don't own anything that's worth anything. Like, I don't have any capital in my clothing, it's awful. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what can I do? So I know that heavy fear, but I think don't allow that fear to stop you creating, and try to think about it in like really basic business terms. Like, what can you do to make a little bit more money and to give you a bit more stability? And yeah, just don't lose the fun or the love of what you do. Don't ever allow the money side of it to like stop you from creating, because it's important that you stick through it, and I promise it will get better. So yeah. And then we've got, that was then Lisa, who inspires you most? I think it changes. I think you kind of have different people in different seasons that you kind of obsess over and you're like really into. I think, I mean, loads of people, really. I mean, it's such a cliche answer, like it's so cliche, but like definitely Alexander McQueen, because I really loved his work. It's probably the reason why I chose fashion over fine art. And in the documentary, there's this lovely scene of him, and like I think it's like Kate Moss in this amazing dress, and he's kind of got like a lit cigarette in his mouth, and he's like, "No, I hate it," and just starts like chopping it up. And he's kind of like, "They're just clothes. Like, even though they're these beautiful, amazing things, they're just clothes. Like, we're not saving the world. It's just something beautiful for people to look at." And I think he always had this really amazing reality in his work. He didn't try and pretend to be somebody that he wasn't. And I've just always loved that. And it's definitely something that I just continue to go back to. So I definitely recommend that documentary, because it's fantastic. So yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucinda.
Pleasure.
A quick shout out reminder that the music session of The World Without Music Would Be Flat is coming up at 2. I'm super excited for it, so hope to see lots of you viewers there. Yeah, I think that was pretty amazing. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, especially after all the chaos of me actually getting online.
No, sure. Isn't that what Zoom's all about? It's,
no, I have like Zoom stress, permanent Zoom stress.
Yeah, that's social anxiety on a whole other level.
A whole other plane. For somebody that loves people so much, I am just incredibly anxious about it all the time.
Yeah, great. I don't know if RRR want to say anything more, or whether we're all good.
Just to say thank you so much, Lucinda, thank you so much, and also Georgia and Molly, brilliant interviewing. Thank you so much for doing that and coming up with all those really insightful questions. And yeah, we've popped the link for the next session at 2 in the chat there, so feel free to join us for that and keep the conversation going.
Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye.